information that might be seen couldn't lead to someone guessing at the client's identity. So to practice this a little bit, we have an activity. I'd like us all to take a minute to read this paragraph and think about which pieces of information are client PII. So a 36-year-old man, John Smith, came into the office today using a cane and limping from an injury he said he got on his job at as a forklift driver over at United Distribution. His family is having a hard time because his son has leukemia and his wife is not able to work between the doctor's appointments and caring for their children. Okay, did you already spot some? So everything in red is information we need to make sure is secure at all times. We have age, name, medical condition description, occupation, employer, and more specific medical information. So to help us remember all of this, we have come up with an acronym. It's GPS, Get, Protect, Shred. We are calling this a roadmap for handling client data. So GPS, get it? When you are getting client information, it's important to remember that you only want to record the information that you need to help them with their CalFresh application. So this is a part that can be kind of tricky because everyone is really good at their jobs as helping people, and when you do that, you're building a rapport with people, and often they'll feel comfortable sharing more information than you need for the application. So it's important to make sure the client feels comfortable, but also don't record the information if you don't need it for the application. Okay, how to protect client information in the office. First, we're going to talk about electronic information. So the foundation of protecting electronic information is that you have a really strong password. All computers and devices that you use that have any sort of client data on them must be password protected. A strong password is going to use a combination of numbers, upper and lowercase letters, and special characters. It's going to be at least 8 characters long, and it won't have any words that you can find in the dictionary. We are going to do an activity to help us create a strong password. Sorry about that slide. So this is something that I learned when I was working in the field for the state, and the goal is to create a strong password that is easy to remember, but not easy to guess. So for this activity, I would like everybody to take a minute to think of a sentence that they can remember. I moved down from Oregon, so I like the Oregon Ducks, and my sentence is, the Oregon Ducks are #1. So I'm going to give everyone 15 seconds to think of a sentence. Okay. So now that you have that sentence, I would like you to use the first letters of the sentence or anything that, like, you can use to substitute a letter. So for my example, I took the T-O-D, and then I put R for the word R, # for the number sign, 1. And you end up getting a password that, if you look at it, it is not easy to guess. It's kind of a jumble of weird symbols and letters, but I'll remember it because the Oregon Ducks are #1. So that sort of fits our guidelines that a good password is easy to remember, but hard to forget. Okay. So now that you have written down a new password, which I hope you will find useful and use to protect protect devices that you're using for client information, I would like you to please shred it as soon as this webinar is over, because the password is going to be the front line of defense for your client's data. So we need to make sure we don't write it down or share it. Don't reuse passwords. Change the passwords often, every 30 to 60 days. And yeah, just do everything you can to keep it safe. That's the front line of defense for the clients. Okay, so some other important ways to protect client data. Make sure all data is encrypted. That'll usually mean having, well, that will mean having data stored on an encrypted device. Make sure you lock your device every time you step away. Use a privacy screen if your computer screen is visible to others. Don't let anyone use your computer who is not working on the client cases. And then also, you know, use good sense in opening emails. Make sure you're being good about not opening spam emails or doing other things that could potentially make your computer vulnerable. Okay, so now for the last, the S in GPS, how to shred your electronic information, destroy it. So since your device that you are storing client data on will be encrypted, all you have to do to shred and completely erase the client data is to delete the file from the computer and then empty the trash on your computer. And it's important to remember to do this as soon as you're done using the client data. So when I worked in the field, I would have a reoccurring reminder on the end of the day on Fridays to kind of have a little Friday activity where I just cleaned out any client information that had accumulated if, you know, we had closed the case. You could also get in the habit of shredding something as soon as a client's case is closed. Whatever you need to do, but make sure you are getting rid of information as soon as possible, as soon as you're not using it, so that it is not potentially exposed. Okay, now we are going to talk about printed information. So like with electronic information, everything needs to be locked. So this means instead of using a password, you're going to be using a lock and key. So make sure that any papers that you're holding on to for any reason for a client are in a locked cupboard at all times. When you a potential place where client data can be exposed is with printing or faxing, because those machines are usually used by more than one person in the office. So if you print something or you have a fax coming in, make sure you go and pick up those papers from the printer immediately. Sorry about that. The other thing to note about printed information is if you're working with papers with client data on them, making sure no one else is able to read them. So maybe you're meeting with a client, making sure that if you have any information that isn't about them, that it is not in eyesight. So some promising practices for printed information. Don't discuss client cases with any PII with anyone. So don't talk about clients in a way that anyone could guess at who they are. Also use a piece of paper, like if you have a sign-in sheet at your front desk where people are signing in for appointments, just have a piece of paper over the previous entries so that the person signing in can't see everybody else who has signed in that day. And then also just routinely shredding all the documents with client information. And if you have a shredding service, make sure that the pickup bin is locked at all times so that you don't have client PII just sitting in a bin waiting for pickup. So let's do an activity. This is the desk of a very busy outreach worker, and they are about to have a client come in and meet with them. So please spot the places where client PII is not secure. So the answer is pretty much everywhere on this desk. They didn't lock their screen when they left the computer. They haven't locked away papers. So they would need to do a little bit of tidying before they brought people into the office. All right, let's talk about protecting client information in the field. So at Outreach, events, tabling events distributions when you're talking with potential clients, make sure that you are creating space for a privacy bubble to make sure that you are not overheard while you're getting client information. And if you are somewhere where there is not enough space to create a privacy bubble and you still need to ask them for some sort of PII, a good trick would be to use a screening tool, so a piece of paper where clients can point at the answers rather than saying them out loud. You can make a screening tool with yes or no questions, like the example on this slide. You could also have different options, like different income brackets where consumers can point to the one that best represents their household. Best practice in more crowded situations would be to screen clients to see if they are potentially eligible, but then take them to somewhere that's less public to fill out the application and get all of the PII you would need for that. Okay. Electronic information. So never leave a laptop or other device unattended. Even if the screen is locked and you have it password protected, just never walk away from them. Always keep them with you. That includes never leave them in a car, even if they're hidden. We've definitely seen cars who've gotten broken into and things are stolen. Another thing is that these days we're so used to using our phones as tools. So it might be tempting to like snap a picture of a client document to help them with an application process. But that information will not be secure. So never use your personal phone for any client information, including photos. If you have a work phone, make sure it's password protected. But even then, it's actually not secure to be sending client information through email to from your work phone to, if you're sending a picture from your work phone to your email account at work. If you need to transfer client data, the best practice would be to go in and physically plug your phone in with a cord to the computer and transfer the data that way. So, promising practices. Of course, always keep your electronic devices password protected, maybe with a cool new password based on a sentence. Use different passwords for every device. Lock devices when they're not in use. And all client data needs to be encrypted, which means all devices need to be encrypted. Okay, so for printed information in the field, we have that same potentially problematic area with the printer. So if you are meeting at a library or something like that, make sure that you or the client are the only ones handling that piece of paper. So go up to the printer and pick it up yourself. Another promising practice is if you're collecting client contact information, rather than using like a sheet of paper where each person will list their information and then the next person will list it underneath, maybe use strips of paper that clients would fill out the strip of paper and then you can put them in a locked box. That way their information is not exposed and no one else is reading it when someone else is coming to sign up. Okay, so protecting client information and reporting and storytelling. We're often required by funders to send in reports about the work we do with clients. For everyone on this call, that of course includes CAFB. Storytelling and social media are also important tools that help us get support for the CalFresh program. So we are going to talk about when you can use PII in these activities and how to do it correctly. So biggest rule is get a release. If you have anything you want to share, and that includes photos, just talking about the client, you need a release. This includes, advocating for the client with the county, reports for CAFB, storytelling. Let's see, I'm sorry. So I have some examples of releases in the resource section for this webinar. I'd like to say thank you to Lorena from Sacramento Food Bank for letting me use some of their examples. These will help you put some things together so that if you have a client that you think would be comfortable sharing the story, you can ask their permission, and if they give it to you, you can have them fill this out, and then you can use their story. But I also, wanted to know, in CAFB reports, you are absolutely not required to send in any sort of client PII, and you would need a release to send us anything. So we've really enjoyed seeing a lot of people have sent in, if they're, in conjunction with their communications department, they are doing a client story and they've gotten a release and they're using it for some of their communications. They're sending us a copy of that with their CAFB reports, and that's fantastic. But just in the reports, the questions of the reports, if you're sharing a client success story or something, you definitely don't need to be including PII. And if you are going to include PII, please add a release. Okay, so here is another activity. Can you spot the PII? And then also, how would you fix it? So assume that this paragraph is going to be submitted as a report, but you do not have the client's permission or release to share it. So Jane Smith came into our office today because she wanted to enroll in CalFresh benefits. Since she's 75 and lives alone on Center Street near our office with a limited income, we were pretty sure she would be eligible. We helped her apply and she was approved for benefits on 8/28/17. So I bet you have spotted some PII. And there it is in red. And then here are some of the ways that we see people fix it. And this would be totally applicable for a report for CAFB. So we changed Jane Smith to just the initials and then added, this is not the client's real name. We took out age, and we were a little less specific about where she lives and her household circumstances. All right. So again, to wrap up our webinar, just another reminder to use GPS as a roadmap in handling private data. So get, protect, and shred. Now we're going to have a bit of time for questions, and I will send out an email with a link to the recording of this webinar and the answers to any questions we don't have time to answer now. And then here is all of our contact information. If you need to get in touch with us about anything more specific, this is how you would reach us. And then I think Stephanie is going to help us with the questions section.
So this is a great time to type in questions if you have any. We've got one question, which is whether the presentation will be shared. And I believe, Micheline, you were recording this, right?
Yes, it says it is recording, so I'm hoping that is true. And then the plan is to email it out to everybody that we emailed about the webinar. And then also we will have it posted on our CAFB website.
Along with the slides?
Yes, along with the slides.
So that is 2 of the 3 questions. And then there's also a comment that if you are using getcalfresh.org application assisters can take a pictures with their phone and upload into the application instead of having to go back to their desk. And that's great for folks who are using that. Other than that, I don't see any questions. So if folks have questions, now's a great time to type them in. So nothing else is popping up. If you want to go ahead and wrap it up.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And hopefully this has helped everyone think a little bit about just how the client information is moving through the office, and if there are any points that need a little more protection, I hope that you will be able to use some of these tips to do that. Yeah, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you for your time.